Yeah, title of my talk today is What You Need to Know About Nevada. And there's a lot of emphasis on companies coming into Nevada right now. There's been a huge amount of money raised so far this year for Nevada projects. But it's really important that we pay attention to where the value is in Nevada so that we know where to allocate the capital in Nevada. So for those that are new to the story, we're going to spend a little bit of time today looking at where the opportunities lie. We're going to take a little bit of time and look at how what we're doing is so different relative to the rest of our peers in the industry. And then we're going to focus on our flagship project, South Grass Valley. Yesterday, we released an update of the project with some drill assays for our very first drill hole, testing our primary target called East Golden Gorge. So I really want to take some time to put those results into context, understand how they relate to what we're looking to see, and how they relate to what we'd like to do for the rest of the project. As we cover these things, I will be making some forward-looking statements, so caution there. Yeah, I'm not going to go through our bios. Everything you want to know about us is available on our website. But in summary, we're a global team of explorers that have been very successful in Nevada. Having been involved in more than 40 million ounces of gold discovered in Nevada, collectively, we've been involved in the discovery of a very large portion of the gold that's been discovered so far. And what we're doing that's so different is we're applying a whole range of new exploration technologies and approaches that are really targeted to exploring undercover. And what we have in Nevada is more than half of Nevada's bedrock sits undercover. We can't see it. It's hidden beneath sand and gravel. And so what we're doing is we're really a first mover in applying these new tools to look into half of Nevada that hasn't really been looked at yet. And again, as I mentioned, certainly the most exciting thing going on for us right now is our current drilling at our South Grass Valley project. We trade for about a $20 million Canadian valuation, and we as management and directors represent the largest block of shareholders. We're all here to make a discovery. We've been at this for a long time, and we really believe in what we're doing. Yeah, the photo at the bottom there is our exploration office in Reno. Right from what we do in the field to what we do in the office, everything is best practices, latest tools. We're members of all the research organizations. And so really, we're focused on applying the best research, the best tools at every scale of investigation. So like I said, there's been a lot of emphasis on Nevada right now, and certainly it's an absolutely fantastic part of the planet. With 100,000 map prospects, more than 600 current and past producing gold mines, it really boasts an incredible endowment, especially if you start looking at it on a per area basis. I mean, on a kilometer, ounces per kilometer per year, just off the charts. Great place to be. But what not enough people emphasize when they're talking about the Nevada projects is that the vast majority of Nevada's gold endowment comes from one type of deposit. They're now famous. They're Nevada's Carlin type gold deposits. Collectively, they contain 250 million ounces. It's one of 6 gold belts in the world of that size. So yes, Nevada is a great place to be, but the vast majority of this wealth of this gold endowment is really clustered in this one type of deposit. Now, the second thing that people aren't very quick to highlight is that 80% of Nevada's Carlin endowment comes from only 3 camps. And you get a feeling here for just how big they are. 40 million ounces, 50 million ounces down here at Cortez, Carlin, the namesake camp, obviously the biggest. So yes, great place to be, but Carlin ounces are what are important. And other than these 3 camps, everything else has been relatively insignificant. Because these camps are so important, they've been studied very carefully. And when we look at the 3 camps altogether here, they're relatively identical in terms of their geologic makeup or their architecture. They're both, all 3 of them are camped out on large regional scale structures, cutting through these reactive lower plate carbonate rocks that we're looking for, up against major intrusives. And what that means is because we know what these things look like, we have a very good idea what it is we need to find when we go to try and find more of them. And as we look at our results at South Grass Valley and our plans at South Grass Valley, everything we do is really focused on what we know about these 3 major camps. To put them into context, they've now been combined to form the world's largest gold producing district. But really, despite how much we know about Nevada's geology, despite how big these camps are, the reality is that Nevada is in the midst of what we say a drastic fall in production that began here in the end of the late 90s. So yes, well, fantastic place to be. Yes, some fantastic globally significant camps. But after a major run up in the 80s and 90s that put Nevada on the map, as an industry, despite more money being spent by more people than ever before, we really haven't done a very good job. So what's happening? Well, what's happened is there's been a number of generations of very good explorers that have done such a good job of looking at all the rocks you can see in Nevada. And there's really nothing left to be found in significance sticking out of the ground. And what that means is the places that are left to explore in Nevada are these vast desert basins that make up more than half of the state. And in essence, what it means is we have a bigger area yet to look at than all the areas we've looked at before. But what it requires are new tools that help us to explore in places that look like this, where we can't see the rocks. There's been 200 million ounces produced from where you can see the rocks. Industry experts agree there's an equivalent endowment waiting to be found. Question is, how do we find them? Well, what we have today are much better tools than we had in the past, and they're allowing us to get back to the large regional scale sampling programs that have historically opened up new search spaces. The most important new tool for our industry, we believe, in searching and recovery is something called hydrogeochemistry. It's basically sampling groundwater. And what it allows us to do is take inexpensive drill holes to collect groundwater samples to directly test the bedrock that we can't see for the commodities that we're looking for. It's incredibly powerful. It's being used all around the world, mostly by the base metal, the copper explorers globally. And what we are here in Nevada is the first mover to bring this technology to look at the more than half of the state that's sitting undercover to go after these monster deposits that we know for every Carlin camp sticking out of the ground here, we know there's another one waiting to be found undercover. So understanding the geologic constraints of where these camps live, we picked a search space of north central Nevada. And what we did was we executed the first regional scale geochem survey across Nevada that's been executed in the last 2 to 3 decades. We collected more than 3,000 groundwater samples, 6,000 groundwater samples, and we oriented them around 30 known gold mines, so we knew exactly what it is we need to find. And the results of this program today allowed us to have a portfolio of brand new projects, each of which we think provides the opportunity for a major new discovery. So those of you that have been following us for a while know that we have been advancing projects in parallel, but in the last 2 to 3 years, this one project down here, South Grass Valley, has risen to the top in terms of how advanced it is and is now our flagship project. So what we're going to do now is shift gears and look at South Grass Valley. It sits at the south end of the larger Grass Valley here, Cortez District at the north end of the valley. And we found this project really undercover as a direct result of our groundwater sampling program. Having collected hundreds and hundreds of small drill holes through this part of the basin, we identified concentrations of gold in groundwater equivalent to what we've seen at the largest deposits in the state. Then layering in conventional tools, in this case, we're looking at air magnetics, geophysics, along with, we look at some gravity geophysics now. We're able to establish that this target, this concentration of gold that hadn't been discovered before, sat immediately above this north-northwest structural corridor that we've now named the Water Canyon Structural Corridor. So with indications that we had geochemical reasons to like it, structural reasons to like it, geological reasons to like it, in 2020, we began our first drilling program at the project, where we put 10 relatively deep stratigraphic test holes into the district to test, do we indeed have this classic Carlin architecture that we projected under the gravels based on all these other tools that we've seen. It was exciting to share at the end of that program that that's exactly what we found. We found these thick packages of lower plate immediately up against a major intrusive along this major structural corridor that importantly contain cubic kilometers of Carlin-style alteration and geochemistry. And that's important because when we look at the camps that we know about, these are the size of the features that were required to support that level of endowment. So the fact that we were able to find this type of system of this size undercover where the first 10 holes was a very big step for the project. Following up from that first round of drilling, we began a second round of drilling last year in 2020, where we tightened the density of our drill holes to see, okay, within this fog of mineralization that you found, can we begin to figure out what controlled the fluids, the hydrothermal mineralized fluids through the district, because ultimately it's following those mineral controls that's going to give us a chance to try and find places where these fluids concentrate into potentially economic grades. What we shared at the end of that program was, while all of these colored units here are all classic lower plate suitable Carlin host rocks, this one particular unit down here, which we call the CLM, shown in purple, this medium purple here, that is the unit that controlled the fluid flow across the district. And it's that intersection of this one particular stratigraphic unit here, along with the major structural corridor that we've seen here, that together defines that intersection of these potential host rocks, this control for fluids with the major structural feature, is what today defines become our primary target, which is called East Golden Gorge. Now there's other groups, there's other projects in Nevada that claim right sort of host rocks, right sort of alteration features, right sort of geologic settings. But what really sets this project apart and this target apart is really how big it is. For scale, I put the Gold Rush footprint here, 8 million ounces at the north end of the valley. And so that's the size of system that we need if we're going to try and find that type of globally significant deposit. What it's important to point out, you can see the irregularity of that deposit. It's not just a perfect shape. And so while we are quite advanced in terms of our understanding of the geology of the system here, we still have to be very careful in how we de-risk this camp scale target. So what we began this year was our third phase of drilling. And what we've done here is we began with 4 relatively deep core holes off to the east of the project that allow us to get down through the system, confirm our geologic interpretations, and really based on what we see, refine the model so we can continue to add drill holes up to our planned 10 drill hole program here that we believe is the density of holes necessary to test this system for a large new Carlin camp. We've just finished our first hole of the program. It was located here at the north end of the project, about 1,000 meters east of a step out from the northern fence of drill holes here. And we put it here because it allowed us not only to test the CLM target unit here, but also step back and angle through the structural corridor here to continue to build our understanding of the exact structural features that are really important for this sort of system. It was good to report that we were able to successfully get down to our target depth here, 1,400 meters, which allowed us to get through the structural corridor and ultimately test the full thickness of our unit. As we announced yesterday, we've got the assays back, and what we've seen is we've intersected a major fluid pathway. Just as we predicted, this unit is what's controlled the fluid pathway, the fluids, almost 100-meter thick interval, intense alteration, screaming trace element values. And when we look at how that relates to our target, you can see how the alteration of geochemistry ties immediately back to our target here. We published the gold numbers as well. Clearly not economic. I mean, we're looking at 80 ppb here. We're nowhere near economic grades in this hole. But what's so important to point out is really how tight the relationship is here. This particular unit, we call it the superhighway, is what controlled the mineral fluids through the district. And what it's done is it's really validated the entire target concept. Now, having de-risked, incrementally de-risked what we've said we wanted to do here, we're going to continue, our plans to continue with these 10 holes, which are really designed, as I mentioned, to test this entire target volume for a large new deposit. I showed you the Gold Rush footprint to begin with. We're now looking at the Cortez Hills footprint. This is 15 million ounces. So you get an idea of how, yes, these systems are large, but the actual deposits are relatively small. And it was based on our understanding of these two different camps, these two different deposits, that we planned the density of drill holes to test our target. So that's exciting. It continues. We believe we have the opportunity here to make, like I said, a large discovery in a brand new camp that's comparable in size to the other 3 big camps. We set this whole project up more than 10 years ago to go after trying to find these sorts of camps undercover. And what we think we found here is the first Carlin type system undercover that's been discovered outside of these major camps in the last couple decades. So what you need to know about Nevada, it's a fantastic place to be. The ounces are not distributed equally. these three camps together represent 80% of the state's Carlin endowment. And we think now that we're going into the 50% of the state that hasn't been looked at, that using the best tools, using the best science, we have the opportunity here to potentially find the state's fourth Carlin camp. So thank you very much.